Judge Davis thought the jury's recommendation was too long. She feels he hasn't mentally matured yet and never had a real shot at getting any help early in life.
But if you were to come in here and instead of being hurt and angry, which is what this court hears, right, as a 20-year-old African-American male that has been, experienced this society, etc., and you would show that, yes, okay, this is the situation, this is who I am. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't want to be in jail for forever.
Thompson repeatedly stated he did not care, not about his sentence, the victim, or her family. But Judge Davis emphasized she's the one that holds the pen, and regardless of what the media may think, she applies the law. To her, 65 years was an extremely long time. As she puts it, it's his whole life, one she doesn't believe should be spent entirely behind bars.
This court does not believe that Mr. Thompson, if given the resources that he can get while incarcerated, is beyond being rehabilitated.
Okay, you guys, so a man kidnaps a woman, assaults her, forces her to withdraw money at an ATM at gunpoint, and then sexually assaults her again. And then you think, okay, he's going to be brought to justice. So a jury looks at that evil and says, okay, you're going to get 65 years in prison. But here's the twist and turn that nobody saw coming. A judge comes behind that jury and says, yeah, based on the circumstances, I think we're going to give him 30 instead. So let me ask you a question. When did restorative justice become code for restoring predators and putting them back into society? Because I'm not seeing restoration here. I'm seeing justice being rebranded. And so if you're a woman and you're watching this, if you're a father with daughters, if you're a mother or a grandmother or a sister, you already know what time it is. Because what this judge has communicated to the American people is very simple. She has said your safety is negotiable, your pain is absolutely debatable, and a man's potential and his circumstances from which he comes from matters more than your trauma. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the religion of our modern justice system, where the gavel is ruled by how a judge feels and justice is sacrificed on the altar of ideology. Let's get into this. Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. I'm your host, April Chapman, and welcome to today's show. So, y'all, today's episode is going to make some people mad, and you're going to be mad for good reason. And you'll probably have issues with some of my political commentary on this particular subject, but I don't care because I don't work for some people. I work for the truth. And so one thing, though, if you're new here, I need you to go on, hit the like button, subscribe, share this video with anyone who still believes that crime is just another cry for help, because we're going to get into it today. So here's the story. Let me just give y'all the facts of what happened first. A man named Christopher Thompson was convicted after prosecutors said that he kidnapped a woman, sexually assaulted said woman in her school parking lot. This man forced her to withdraw money from an ATM at gunpoint, then drove back to assault her again. A jury of this man's peers recommended 65 years in prison. If you ask me, 65 years was not enough. This was a heinous crime. And after I show you the disposition of this individual, you're probably going to agree with me that 65 years wasn't even enough. However, the judge in this case, Judge Tracy Davis, this woman used her authority to impose a 30-year sentence instead. Now, you might be like, well, dang, sis, 30 years is a long time. 65 years is even better. But what's so bad about this? Let me explain to you the judge's reasoning. This woman suggested that the perpetrator here, he fell through the cracks, right? And she pointed to a lack of mental health or anger management treatment for him, and then expressed hope that, we just want him to get the help that he needs while he's incarcerated. Now, let's not miss this part. Reportedly, while in the courtroom, this man denied it despite there being DNA evidence linking him to the crime. In the courtroom, he has outbursts and vulgar comments, and because of that, there was additional prison time tacked onto that for his contempt. However, on the political side of this story is making a lot of waves, and rightfully so, because the Metro Council Republicans said that, listen, in light of this verdict, we need more judicial transparency here. We need these decisions to be published so that the voters can track exactly how these woke judges or any judge is, what their track record is. So I'm actually going to share the clip with you, but this is a real life example of a system that is literally drifting away from justice and into ideology. Like, we're here now. So let me go ahead and share with you guys this clip of what happened.
New developments after WHAS 11 News brought you the story exclusively Friday night at 11 o'clock. A Louisville judge cuts a convicted rapist prison sentence from 65 years, cutting it more than half down to 30 years.
Yeah, in response, Metro Council Republicans say they'll be releasing judicial records so you can know more about these elected judges.
Well, Christopher Thompson, seen right here, was found guilty of kidnapping a woman, sexually assaulting her in a school parking lot before forcing her to withdraw money from an ATM at gunpoint. After that, he assaulted her again. As our Ian Hardwitt reports today, the judge says Thompson fell through the cracks.
Regardless of what the media thinks, regardless of what anybody thinks, I apply the law. I do not judge people before they walk before me.
Christopher Thompson came before Judge Tracy Davis, who cut his 65-year sentence for kidnapping, sexual assault, and robbery down to 30 years.
And I am beyond pissed that this judge did this. And what example does that set? And how do you explain this to your daughter or your mom or your grandma?
Councilwoman Crystal Bast represents the Pleasure Ridge Park neighborhood. That's where Thompson kidnapped a woman, then raped and robbed her at gunpoint. Louisville Metro Police released these photos of Thompson in a ski mask at the time in July 2023. In light of the lighter sentence,
we have asked for judicial transparency.
Metro Council Republican leader Anthony Piagentini says he'll publish a record of Jefferson County judges' decisions on a website.
This is going to be a lot of essentially manual work by this caucus, where we're going to be asking questions of the clerk of the court, get the data, and then get it out to the voters.
Davis, elected to her seat on the bench, had the authority to cut down the sentence.
65 years is an extremely long amount of time.
I'll take it.
Unfortunately, he fell through the cracks.
The judge said Thompson never had mental health or anger management treatment.
I truly hope that you get what you need while incarcerated.
At his sentencing, Thompson says he didn't commit the crime. However, LMPD connected him to it with DNA evidence. He's being held here at the Louisville Metro Department of Corrections, where he's been charged with choking an officer. That was before his sentencing. Reporting for WHAS 11 News, I'm Ian Hardwitt, on your side.
With contempt of court for vulgar comments made to the judge and prosecutor.
For that, he was given about 4.5 years of extra prison time. He won't be released from prison until he's more than 50 years old.
In December, Thompson was found guilty of kidnapping, sodomy, robbery, and sexual abuse. The jury in that case recommended 65 years in prison, which the Commonwealth's attorney says was most appropriate due to Thompson's actions and inappropriate outbursts in court. But Judge Tracy Davis sentenced Thompson to 30 years, saying she does not believe he is beyond rehabilitation.
It's unfortunate, but Mr. Thompson never actually got the opportunity to get any type of treatment, whether that be mental health treatment, whether that be anger management, etc. Unfortunately, he fell through the cracks.
She's made a decision. It was a legal decision. I'm not saying she did anything illegal. I'm simply questioning her judgment and whether or not this is the right thing for justice and the victims and this community.
Thompson's charges stemmed from an incident in July 2023. Police say Thompson pointed a gun at a woman, drove her to a nearby elementary school, and sexually assaulted her. Thompson then drove her to an ATM, forced her to withdraw money, and sexually assaulted her again.
This man was sentenced now to 30 years. Who believes that she will only be victimized for 30 years? I'm sure that this has changed her life literally forever, that her relationships and her mental state will never be the same.
Thompson has a criminal history. In 2023, he was charged with fleeing or evading police, receiving stolen property, and using restricted ammo. Court records say last year he was caught on an LMDC camera physically assaulting an officer.
We've reached out to Judge Davis through the Jefferson Circuit Court staff attorney about the sentencing. Piagentini says he has more concerns about the number of shock probations Judge Davis has granted. He plans to request those records and put them out for the public to view.
Thompson will be back in court in March for assault charges he got while in custody. Meanwhile, Jefferson County's Commonwealth Attorney Jorina Weathers is also reacting to this decision, saying, quote, "We are disappointed that the court deviated from the sentence for less than half of what the jury of his peers determined was appropriate."
Seconds after the start of the hearing deciding the future for Christopher Thompson.
Before we even get appearances, Mr. Thompson, I'm gonna need you to be respectful.
I ain't doing nothing.
Well, it's fine. Okay?
What?
It's fine.
Yeah.
Because here's the
Spit on you, I
thing.
would.
At the end of the day, I'm the one with the pen.
Sentencing day for the 24-year-old found guilty of kidnapping, robbery, sexual abuse, outbursts in court, all among the charges from July 2023. LMPD found DNA connecting Thompson to the robbery and sexual assault of a woman in southwest Jefferson County. At the time, Thompson was on probation and on a diversion program after being charged with having a stolen firearm and fleeing police.
Judge, I think I have an obligation to ask the court to consider a sentence in the 20-year range, which would be the minimum as he has been found.
Mr. Thompson has shown nothing but extremely egregious conduct in this courtroom as well as the underlying crime itself. This was one of the most offensive cases that I have handled.
The jury recommends a 65-year sentence to the judge, but instead, Judge Tracy Davis went much lower, 30 years, citing his background.
Mr. Thompson never actually got the opportunity to get any type of treatment, whether that be mental health treatment, whether that be anger management, etc. Unfortunately, he fell through the cracks and ended up before this court.
She made this ruling after talking over Thompson and acknowledging a lack of effort to change.
It is just a shame that you can't look at all of these things and say, as of today,
You can't tell me
February
how
the
I look at
2nd
anything.
of 2026, I want to be a different person. I want a better outcome. I want to be an asset to society.
Republican Metro Council member Anthony Piagentini has been vocal about decisions.
Did y'all hear what he said? First of all, this whole time, I try to do my best to try to find clips where he was cussing at her, being rude, being disrespectful, talking over her. And we're going to get into my commentary that kind of explains this. We really are. But what I want to do is first, let's kind of first unpack this. There's this phrase that has become increasingly popular that a lot of people love to throw around, and it's restorative justice. And in theory, I've covered it before. When you hear restorative justice, it sounds lovely. It really does. But in practice, what you are watching all across the country as it relates to this restorative justice is not restoration. It's reversal. It literally flips the moral order. So back in the day, the way it used to work, the order was very simple. If you commit the crime, you face the consequences. You're held accountable. And if restitution is possible, you'd make it right. However, we live in a new world. We live in a world with a woke justice system. So in the woke justice system, it's crime, then you get a boatload of excuses. Then you get all of these accommodations and then services and a whole sob story campaign about why this person deserves to either get out early or receive a less harsh punishment than they would normally get if we weren't dealing in restorative justice. This is why I call all of these woke judges and the prosecutors, this is the compassion cartel. Okay, and I'm going to say it out loud as it relates to this is what the compassion cartel hates. Not every sentence. I don't know why they view that every sentence requires a counseling plan. Some sentences are a wall, a stopgap, a wall between a predator who has demonstrated a history of being predatory and violent and the next victim, right? So some sentences, you need a harsh penalty in order to erect a wall between the predator and the victim. Now, I can already hear all of the wokety woke, activists who are always in their feelings and emotions saying, April, you don't care about rehabilitation. That's not true. Yes, I do. I do care about rehabilitation. I know people who have committed crimes and they're now on the outside and they're doing just fine. Okay? I care about rehabilitation after justice has been rightly adjudicated. There's a category distinction that must be dealt with. I'm not interested in rehabilitation instead of justice because justice is not some vibe that you feel that ebbs and flows with your feelings. Justice is not a therapeutic moment. It's not your opportunity to demonstrate to the world how much of a do-gooder you are. It's not a TED Talk about childhood trauma. Justice has a moral standard. And as a Christian, I am compelled by biblical admonition that when we see in Scripture, it doesn't treat violent evil like some misunderstood personality type. No. The Bible gives us, even in the Old Testament context, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And before all of the soft-hearted, people start clutching their pearls, I'm not talking about petty vengeance. That's not even what the scripture is trying to convey in that text. It's about proportional judgment, meaning the punishment should fit the crime, right? The book of Proverbs tells us something very, very simple. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike, an abomination to the Lord. You need to let that marinate down in your spirit again. Justifying wickedness, excusing it, reframing it, reducing it down to he just fell through the cracks, whatever you want to call it, God says that that's an abomination. And so when you have a system that is more emotionally invested in the criminals than the actual victims who have suffered irreparable harm sometimes, that system is practicing a form of, I'm just going to call it moral insanity. We cannot have a well-ordered society if this is how the judicial system is going to operate. Listen, I'm not saying that someone can't have trauma. That is legitimate. I'm not even saying that someone can't have mental health issues. Not saying that either. But here's what I am saying. I'm saying that trauma does not erase guilt. Your lack of treatment does not remove your responsibility. Just because This judge here has said, maybe he was failed by the system. Being failed by the system does not give you permission to terrorize somebody else. If you weren't trained on anger management, who cares? It doesn't give you the right to turn a woman, a defenseless woman who did nothing to you, into your personal stress ball. And so there's so many reasons why this is dangerous. But this is dangerous because it is sending a message to criminals and victims at the same time. But the message to the criminals is, listen, if you do the crime, hey, we'll search for a story or an excuse that makes you look like a victim too. Because you fell through the cracks. You didn't get an opportunity to get the mental health treatment and the counseling that you deserve. You grew up fatherless or motherless or this or that. They will find some way to make the criminal look like a victim too. And at the same time, here's the message to the victims. We're sorry. We know you've experienced trauma and someone committed a legal criminal offense against you, but you're suffering. It's not as important as the offender's journey. You don't know his story. Him had a hard life. This is what they want victims to internalize, minimize your trauma and what has been done to you, and you need to think about what they've been through too. And so this is exactly why people are absolutely losing trust in the courts, and why I keep saying we cannot have a well-ordered society this way. Because if a jury can look at this case and say, hey, 65 years is fair, and some woke judge can just come behind them and then say, no, we're going to do 30 because, he had a hard life and didn't really get the help he needed. Mind you, while she's lowering the sentence, the criminal is still acting out in the courtroom. He's not demonstrating any sort of remorse, no sorrow over what he did, just rude and wicked and disrespectful. What people hear at that point is that, you know what? That judge's courtroom is not a place of justice. It is a place where ideology is rendered. And so I'm probably going to go a step further. This country is being destroyed by woke ideology. It is showing up in our judicial system, and it's showing up as cultural Marxism. That's what you just watched. It is dividing our American world into these categories of oppressed versus oppressor, systems versus individual responsibility, social explanations versus you need to be held morally accountable. So now, under that paradigm, every criminal becomes a product of society, and every victim ends up being collateral. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to concede justice on the altar of the system made him do it, because guess what? There are plenty of people all through the annals of time who have been through way worse, who too, just like him, fell through the cracks and they didn't become rapists. Okay? Plenty of people have had hard lives and didn't put a gun in somebody's face and sodomize them and then force them to take money out the ATM and then assault them again. I don't think we're realizing the danger of this ideology. We are now raising an entire generation that all they want is understanding void of accountability. And that is in no way compassionate. That is a form of corruption that is hiding behind fake compassion and kindness, but it is really detrimental, not just to the criminal, but to the innocent who suffer as a result of it. I'm constantly reminded. I know y'all sick of me quoting Romans 13. I know. But what else you want me to do? The scriptures give us a guide for the government's role. It is to be God's servant for your good. And clearly in Romans 13, it tells us if you do wrong, you should be afraid, not the victim. You should be afraid for the government does not bear the sword in vain, meaning, y'all, the sword is not symbolism, okay? It is supposed to stand for something. The sword is supposed to represent justice, not some restorative system. Not all he needs resources and an emotional support dog and his own personal counselor and a journal. No. The justice system bears the sword for a reason. It is to restrain the evil, not so we can rub the criminals back and make them feel better. It is there for a purpose. And when we dull that sword, you end up sharpening the criminal. And that's where we are today. So let's talk reality for a minute. This man's release date absolutely matters. What we're seeing here, when violent offenders are treated like clients, right, instead of criminals, the public begins to feel like they're just some test case in a laboratory for somebody else's social experiment. And right now, this experiment has a high body count. And let me tell you what woke has done to our judicial system and our courtrooms. It is effectively turned justice into some group therapy session. If you see the way this judge was interacting with the criminal, she wanted to turn it into a group therapy session, right? He was like her client, right? And the victim, obviously the victim wasn't there. She didn't give any credence to the victim at all. It was just some inconvenient detail. It was like a byproduct of what had happened, but he was the main event. This woke judge did not see a man who committed a heinous crime. She relegated what he did to system failure, right? Kind of like a check engine light or something. He just had some unmet needs. He fell through the cracks, right? She saw that this was a chance to look compassionate on somebody else's expense. And the reality is, all of this performative mercy, it's not mercy. Because real mercy doesn't throw the community under the bus. It doesn't put innocent people in harm's way. This wasn't some petty theft crime. This wasn't a mistake. I didn't know, I was influenced. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. No, this man kidnapped her, sexual assault, armed robbery, and then doing it again. And if you can do that to another human being, and then get more charges when you're in police custody, and then when you're in the courtroom, show no remorse, cuss out the judge, and be real indignant and haughty and boastful and arrogant, you're not misunderstood. You are a danger to society, and you need to be locked up and put away for good. That's my opinion. And I don't care who likes it. So I know half of the stuff I say makes y'all clutch your pearls anyway. But to me, this felt like the justice system doing what a lot of undisciplined single mom culture females do to their boys. She's pandering, placating, refusing to hold the child accountable, thinking that the 65 years was too harsh, so we'll punish him, but not a lot, right? I'm telling you, a woman cannot raise a boy into a man. These women are ruining not just their own children, but now it's infecting the rest of society. Don't get it twisted. I'm not talking about every single mom. My mama was a single mom and raised 2 boys, but there are deficiencies there. I'm talking, though, about a mindset that has infected an entire generation that says, oh, him just a really good boy. He just needs a little help. He didn't mean it. He a straight A student. He's got so much potential. Listen, potential doesn't unrape anybody. Potential is not going to heal that woman's trauma, and potential is not going to bring law and order and safety to a community. When you treat, he's a grown man at this point. When you treat a grown man like some naughty toddler, You produce an entitled monster, and that is what we saw. That's who we saw in that courtroom, an entitled monster. And so as I wrap it up, I said a lot. Let me go on and land this plane. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. You guys, this is what happens when justice becomes therapy. You end up calling mercy what is actually misplaced pity, right? You end up calling accountability what is actually cruelty. But it's only cruelty toward the criminals, right? Meanwhile, you have the victim who is still expected to just live and deal with it and move on with their life. So no, this is not some small story. This story was a warning flare, because if we keep baptizing crime with a list of him didn't do nothing excuses, we're going to continue to bury communities under the consequences of what these criminals do. So at this point, I'm curious to know what do you guys think? Do you think that some of these judges, although some are elected and some are appointed, depending on the level and the jurisdiction, do you believe that these local leaders are right in saying that we need some transparency on how the judge sentences these cases, because voters need to know what they're signing up for when they vote these lower court judges into office? Because the public needs to know, is this judge consistently soft on crime, right? Is this a pattern? Is this just an isolated incident? Because if you have a judge who treats predators like it's their little pet project, then the community is going to need to decide if that is the ideology that they want on the bench. And so my encouragement to you guys is learn how the judges in your area are selected and retained. Pay very close, very careful attention to the sentencing patterns, right? Don't vote based on the slogans and the demographic of where the people, the judge comes from. Vote based on an objective standard. Because I'm going to tell you something that nobody wants to admit. Evil loves low information voters. And what we keep missing is that sometimes it's not always Congress. We can't always blame the Supreme Court or the governor. A lot of the chaos that we are living under in our own communities is coming from these woke lower court judges. These are your little hidden gatekeepers that are cutting sentences and signing off on all of these lenient judgments, right? They're treating predators like projects. And as a result, our communities are turned into test sites for cultural Marxist ideology. So yes, you need to know who your judges are. You should know their patterns and know what it is that they believe as it relates to justice. Because I'm not a social experiment. And all of these elections have consequences. And until we change that, nothing else is going to change. So drop me a comment down in the box below. Do you think this judge should have been able to cut the jury's recommendation down from 65 years to 30 years? Whatever it is that you think, leave me your comments down in the description box below. And until next time, you guys, stand firm, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.